Housekeepers who worked in casinos/hotels, what's the weirdest thing you walked into? A couple came to this luxury dude ranch I worked at and spent over $5,000 to stay there, only to not come out of their room the entire time. Went in to clean the room when they left and saw incredibly expensive unopened alcohol and boxes of sex toys around the room. On the bed they left a note that said enjoy. What? We threw out the toys. Who the fuck would use a used sex toy left by an unknown person and got hammered at night? They didn't use the sex toys. They used the bottles. For real. The toys were still in the box. I worked in a casino where I watched a middle-aged man literally shake a solid turd down his pant leg, sit back down, and continued on his machine. I turned around with backpack vacuum on and went to my lunch break. I didn't get paid enough to pick up stranger shit. Everyone knows you don't quit on a hot streak. What if the hot streak is running down your thighs? If they're your lucky pants, you do nothing. Cleaned a room that contained both a deck of Uno cards and a knockoff deck of Ono cards. Oh no. Ono. You know. I used to work in reservations in a big chain hotel in London. Housekeeping once told us there was one regular guest who used to always leave a single whole intact raw egg in the bed when they checked out. Nobody ever figured out why or where on earth they got that single raw egg in the middle of central London. Grocery stores aren't frequent in the area and they certainly don't sell eggs one by one. Perhaps it's the same guy who brought a live chicken in the other comment. They randomly found a chicken in the room. But which came first? Is it chicken? Or is it egg? I think about this question every time I go to Vegas. Vegas housekeeping would be the highest rated reality show ever. American Horror Story, Vegas housekeeping. I was a housekeeper at a dive of a hotel in Chico, CA in the late 90s, a week or so before a local homeless woman had stuck her arm in a tiger's cage, a circus that was traveling through town, and got mauled. That weekend I was cleaning rooms and knocked on the door of a room paid for by a local charity organization. It turned out the guest was in the middle of sexy time. Quickly realizing it wasn't a good time to clean the room, I said I would come back later. To my dismay, the woman opened the door and asked me to join her and her friend. I declined. She then reached out and grabbed me by the arm and tried to drag me in. Her arm was covered in bandages and lacerations. It was the woman who had been tiger mauled. I yanked my arm free and ran away. I'll never forget what her shredded bandaged hand looked like. I know I'm not adding much value to this comment, but I felt a strong what the actual fuck. I felt the same, but thinking about it for a second I'm theorizing that the same kind of person who's unafraid of sticking their arm inside of a lion's cage is probably also not afraid of trying to grab the housekeeper for sexy time. Why do you think the tiger mauled her? She wouldn't take no for an answer. She was definitely into pussy. Not me, but my friend from Ukraine worked at a crappy casino hotel in Wendover, Nevada, because they would sponsor his work visa. He wasn't a housekeeper, but would have to do maintenance in rooms. He said one day he went to a room where the people had already checked out and there was a chicken in the room. Like a live chicken. Just chilling there. Maybe the story is funnier when he tells it with his accent. Why is chicken in room? We will never know why chicken was in room. Let's go bowling cousin. Someone I know works housekeeping at a casino. He walked in on a guy smearing shit over the walls with his bare hands. He was pissed that he lost money and thought he was justified to do it. Housekeeping called security. He was charged and banned. Ah yes, the Eric Cartman method. This is related, but not exactly the question. When my wife and I were looking at wedding venues, one we went to was a hotel. The event manager wanted to take us up and show us the honeymoon suite. She opened the door, and there were two old men, like 60s 70s, shirtless drinking vodka in the room. She was so extremely embarrassed and apologetic. She was very sweet too, but you could tell she was so mad at whoever screwed that up for her. We didn't choose the place, wasn't why, but I hadn't thought about that in a while, and figured someone else may get a kick out of it. There were two old, like 60s 70s, shirtless drinking vodka in the room. Shirtless what? Chickens? Why is chicken in room? BEAUE vodka is in room. Worked housekeeping for a few weeks. Guess the weirdest shit was a 70-ish couple left their room, so I went to clean it. Big bottle of Kai and a dildo so big even Ron Jeremy would have been jealous left out on the bed. At 70 I'm impressed one of them could take a massive dildo. I would think the opposite. At 70 everything would loosen up a bit. I walked in on a couple sleeping on the bathroom floor of a hotel room in the hotel I work for. The bed wasn't a shade and everything was normal with that one exception. Drunk AF no doubt. Yep, cold tile floors are great when you're hammered out of your mind. I worked for a hotel chain in Colorado, and one day my coworker and I went to strip a bed and the bed was full of oranges. The dresser oranges. Side table. Cans of mandarin oranges. Not exactly shocking or disgusting, but it was weird. Maybe they were doing a self-cleanse? Vitamin C in excess equals diarrhea. Alternatively, they cold beans from an Asian country where mandarins specifically mean good luck or long life. One could also trigger a miscarriage by ingesting a ton of vitamin C. Or maybe they just really like oranges. Damn. We had a hotel room one time and checked in around 3 to 4ish. Can't remember what hotel it was. When we walked in one of the housekeepers was asleep in the chair. Apparently had taken a rest and checked out for who knows how long. We woke her up when we came in the room. She was very apologetic and took her cart and stuff with her right away. We never said anything to the staff or saw her again. The room was all clean and set up so nothing to complain about. If she is anything like the housekeepers I know that was one of many jobs. Working double shifts isn't uncommon and many of those ladies work extra when offered. You are good people for not saying anything. Agreed. That lady needed that sleep. No one willingly breaks rules and jeopardizes their job unless they are desperate for some sleep. Hotel worker. Had an American guy come into our hotel. Meant to be staying for 3 days. Went into his room and never left the room in over 2 weeks. He kept phoning down to extend his stay. The strange thing was, he had the same routine every day. Around 8 AM, he would order 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes to be sent up to his room. He'd sign the check off to his room for the beers, but had to pay cash for the cigarettes as they came from the hotel shop, which wasn't owned by the hotel therefore wasn't able to charge to the room. The cigarettes came to around £11, and he would always give us a £20 note and told us to keep the change. Lunchtime rolls around, and again. 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes. Come dinner time, again. Another 8 beers, but 40 cigarettes this time, assuming to keep a stock of when the shop closed at night time. This happened every day he was staying with us. No one ever saw him leave the hotel, so assumed he had a stack of £20 notes to pay for his cigarettes. He also instructed housekeeping not to clean his room. When he eventually left, the maid was greeted with hundreds of empty beer bottles. The bin was half full with cigarette ends and ash, and the room was left remarkably clean, albeit smelling awful. We tried to research the guy, but could only find he was part of an American broadcasting company. It was a long time ago and can't remember, so assumed he was over here to lie low. He checked out, paid off his bill, didn't even bother to check the bill, into a taxi, and never to be seen again. Maybe he was writing a book. This was totally my first thought. Working on something. Sounds like Hunter S. Thompson or some shit. Maybe it was Hunter S. Thompson? Not my story, but a friend was a maid at a cheap hotel in our university town. She has a bunch of gross and weird stories, but the most insane is when she came into work and found a full abandoned meth lab in the bathroom of one of the rooms. Her manager made her clean up a bunch of trash from the different ingredients and scrub chemical stains that must have been left by spills. Apparently the room smelled like a bad science experiment or just normal meth, and the management refused to get any police involved. I imagine they believed it would discourage their regular clientele. I believe she quit very soon after. I'm pretty sure that violates health and safety laws. Meth labs are pretty hazardous, so they really should have called a hazmat team to do the cleaning. That was our belief at the time too. I believe she spent almost a whole shift cleaning, but scared of what to touch, before she threw in the meth towel and she insisted someone else take over. The meth towel. Was on a youth trip with my church. Guys stayed in one room, girls stayed in the other. All us bored kids start looking around the room. Yeah, no, because kids. And we found an jug of weed under the bed. Super big find for a couple of church kids. We go to tell the girls what we found, and they go on to tell us they did the same thing, and found blood all over the wall. TLDR, found weed and blood. What did you do with the weed? Destroyed it in a series of small fires. That seems to be the reasonable way to do it. You change the state of the matter into another safer state of matter by purging its impurities with fire. Yes, but better filter it through my lungs first for the environment. Had a teacher who was the manager of Marriott in Germany for a while. She has wild stories. Once found an anaconda in the bathroom, wrapped around the shower curtain pole. Pulled naked devil worshippers out of the pool at 3 AM when the pool closed, and they refused to get out. They weren't even guests. Saw the janitor with a wheelbarrow, a hose, and a shovel. He went somewhere, went to lunch and came back. After his lunch she followed him and asked what was up. He didn't speak good German and just said cleaning up African lady a leg. Turned out some lady had jumped from the top floor of one side of the building. Hotel was kind of like an L shape, one side higher than the other, hit the emergency ladder on the way down, and had her leg torn off before becoming mush on the roof of the other side of the building. He had shoveled most of her into the wheelbarrow at this point, was just working on getting her leg unstuck from the ladder. Cleaning up African lady a leg. You were answered correctly and fully, in spite of the language barrier. So what did you do today? I cleaned up a mutilated corpse from the roof after lunch. Ah. So it was kinda slow then? Why is leg in here? Not me, but my husband used to manage a hotel in our town. Our town is very industrial in Alberta. That gave the town away right there. So when oil was high all the hotels were full of drillers and rig pigs and frack boys. So one morning, the housekeepers were cleaning a room and saw a 10 thick dildo with ribbed edges. Metal, I believe they thought it was. Course no one touched it to confirm. Left it where it was and finished cleaning the room. Older tough looking guy was renting the room. No one said anything, and he didn't say anything either. This was about 10 years ago. I'm hung up on 10 thick. It's only 0.76 when you factor in conversion to US. How many Tim Hortons to the loony? I worked as a concierge for an upscale hotel, so, naturally, because there wasn't a line for my desk, I fielded complaints regularly. One day a woman, very nice and patient, rare, calmly explained to me that her 5-year-old opened the door to their bathroom and there was a housekeeper pooping in there. The housekeeper and the boy screamed so loudly that I had already gotten noise complaints from the adjacent rooms. Needless to say, that family got a free night and an upgrade. When you gotta go, you gotta go. I've answered similarly before, but here's a brief summary of my favorites. 10 plus years in hotels. Duffel bag with $10K in cash. The security guard who found it returned it. Once we had a guest that was the focus of a counterfeit investigation. How did we know this? The agents who were investigating rented a room near Fizz and told us. YTF they thought that would be a good idea when hotel workers are gossipy little shits. I don't know. Somehow it must have worked because the arrests were made a few days later. Worked in a hotel that allowed pets with a small deposit, so the number of animals was unreal. The dogs/cats were fine, but what got my goat was the folk that tried to avoid paying the fee and pretended they didn't have an animal. Okay, whatever. You don't like spending money any more than the next dude. But the problems arose when we needed to get into the room, maintenance, cleaning, and had zero idea to expect an animal. Almost everyone who worked there had a story of being bitten by a dog at some point. On the further subject of unexpected denizens from the kingdom Animalia, we also encountered bears, young cub, alligator, 3 foot plus, in the tub, a capuchin monkey, mean as fuck, a box of chicks, apparently this is how they are mailed, in a fucking cardboard box, OMG, the noise, etc. These were actually all from one particular guest who worked in the TV industry. The worst part about it was that cleaning his room was a crapshoot. He'd swear blind he wouldn't have animals in the room. And then boom, alligator. So of course the poor housekeeper WTF's out of there. And then Jude would get home at 10 to 11 PM and scream at us about his room not being cleaned. We'd explain that we don't clean rooms with loose wildlife. And he would categorically deny that there were any animals in his room. Point blank. Over and over. Even if we had pics. It was fucking bizarre. Also disturbing was the trend of people abandoning animals. Dogs, cats, and once a goddamn blue macaw. Like, WTF dude. Getting away from animals. It was also pretty common to find guns. I was working in operations in this hotel around the time of Sandy Hook, and we found several. Our working theory was that people felt unsafe and started carrying, but they weren't used to it and inclined to forget them. We generally would give it a few hours, then turn them into the cops if no one called to reclaim it. Once we found a gun that was so damn old it was basically rust and dirt. That one freaked us out badly enough that instead of waiting for the officer that worked our overpass security to swing by that evening, we called to have someone pick it up. None of us knew much about firearms. Our fear was that if it even had bullets, There was the risk that it could. I honestly don't know. Do guns explode? Lol. I have no idea, but I also don't know why anyone would have carried it around. I doubt it could have fired. Depending on the hotel. Sex toys are so common we don't think about them. Just trash them. Honorable mentions. Fake IDs. Not for underage drinking. Dude was older. All kinds of drug paraphernalia. Unexpected dead people. Oh. And the cat hoarder that had 14 cats in a small 300 square foot room. With no litter boxes. Hotel had to hire a biohazard team to take the room apart when that guest was evicted. They did it in full hazmat suits. Duffel bag with $5,000 of cash. Sir, here's a bag with the $600 cash in it. Sir, you left your bag with $3 in it. Do you want to collect? Sir, I found your lost dollar on the ground. Can I keep it? We are just calling you inform you that you left a receipt in the room. I found your empty bag. You owe me $100 for my kindness. My grandfather used to work at a posh resort where many celebrities checked in. He told us that Bill Cosby always trashed the room and left behind a huge mess with no tip for the housekeepers. This was back when Cosby was viewed as America's dad. Now it doesn't seem strange at all. There are a lot of bad stories about Bill Cosby that have nothing to do with the fact that he is a serial rapist. Turns out he's also a huge asshole. I don't know about them, but I was working on a job in a shady part of Yakima called Yakima. We were working 12 to 14 hour days. I just left my gun in the drawer, and I'm not a cluttery person, so I just empty my pockets into the nightstand drawer every night. One day I left my gun, a roll of duct tape, some big zip ties and a knife in the drawer. When I came back, room was clean and the drawer was organized nicer. After that, the housekeeping lady would scuttle away upon my visage. A shady part of Yakima called Yakima. Yup, checks out. I was at random party taking place in a suite and I go into the bathroom and see a guy in the bathtub with an entire rotisserie chicken. He looks up at me and sticks out a greasy finger as he finishes chewing and then says, "Don't mind me." Why is chicken in tub? Oh, I got one. I was a night auditor though. This one starts out benign enough. My night shift starts, and I have a small line. It's Saturday and we're near a couple of casinos. Not unusual. A very polite man checks in and rents a top level suite for him and his wife. I get him in and start checking in the next couple. Being distracted, I barely noticed the previous couple come back in, only that the wife was partially obscured by the luggage cart and I remember thinking to myself, that's an ugly woman. The night is quiet and I leave. I come in the next night to hear what unfolded after I left. The couple never came back down to check out and have not been seen since. When housekeeping entered the room they immediately alert the FDM. Every surface of the room is covered in lube. The bed, the couch, the jacuzzi, even the mini fridge is covered in bottles and bottle of lube and baby oil. We know for sure it's lube because a dozen bottles are left in the tub. But wait, there's more. In addition to the lube, there is a rather large horse dildo left behind with thick black scuff marks and cracked down the center. My FDM, in her infinite wisdom, decides that they must have been junkies and this dildo is where they are hiding their needles. She decides to pick it up to open it safety reasons. But when she does, all that falls out is a rather impressive motor that has been burned out. The icing on this cake comes when they review the security tape. The wife is clearly a man in a wig. It's a big burly dude wearing a cheap wig. I have no idea why this isn't getting more attention. There's a million dildos in this thread but none of them have the motor burned out. Jesus. Okay, I've got hotel stories for days, but I'm just a desk clerk, not a housekeeper. Those women work harder than just about anyone you'll meet and deserve tons of respect. Be good to your housekeepers, people. That out of the way, I'm working the graveyard shift many years back. It's just me there, and a public space attendant. Basically housekeeping for the common areas and general gopher. He was one of many Alexes that worked that shift, so I don't think it's too revealing to use his name. Anyway, he'd appreciate the infamy. So this night I'm plugging away on some numbers, and he radios me in hysterics insisting I come up to the second floor. So I grab my keys and jump in the elevator, and when the doors opened on the second floor hallway, I nearly lost my lunch all over the elevator. Immediately outside the elevator, there were brown, lumpy clumps hanging off of everything, dripping in repellent stalactites from the ceiling, stippling the walls and doors, tracked in huge streaks across the carpet, glistening wet and awful everywhere you looked. Next to one of the doors were all of the bed linens from a room that looked like someone took them mud wrestling. It was horrific and completely surreal, and my jaw dropped open. Then, without missing a beat, and before my brain could even finish jumping up on a chair and squealing ooh like a housewife seeing a rat, he grabs this wad off the wall, tosses it into his mouth, and swallows it in front of me. No shit. No shit. In fact, as he proudly announced, seeing as I was turning green, FRIJOLES, some absolute monster had emptied a quart, just shy of a liter if memory serves, can of refried beans into their bedsheets, mushed them all together, and then taken that mess into the hallway in front of their room, and shaken them out like an old rug or a wet dog, flinging beans onto every surface for an impressive distance in every direction. Alex, seeing me turn green with horror, laughed for pretty much the rest of the evening. The next day management charged the guests a ridiculously small cleanup fee considering the scope and maliciousness of the mess, and they never offered any explanation as to why they had decided to bean spackle the whole way. Why was Alex so metal as to eat recently in a bed currently on a wall footstuffs just to fuck with me? You kinda had to know him. But he a commitment to comedy and chaos that I remember very fondly to this day. Dude was as awesome a partner in crime as you could ask for. This was a thing that sports teams used to do as a stupid, drunken fuck everything we are so cool thing. There were some scandals about it a few years ago I recall. In a hockey tournament, one of the dads takes back a hooker. Us kids are 16. She wants to sleep with the son. Father says no. Hooker gets pissed and pulls the fire alarm as she leaves. Entire team kicked out of the hotel at 2 AM. The good old days. My mother was once a housekeeper at a Harrah's casino hotel. She opened up a room and a terrible smell hit her. Apparently a handicapped man staying at the hotel was waiting for his help to show up, but they never did, and his shit had overflowed its container and his phone was dead, and he couldn't move. She went to go find help, and left that day, and never came back. Oh, that sucks. Poor guy. I stayed at a hotel that hosted a Magic the Gathering tournament, was visiting Atlantic City, only realized what it was as I played Magic a decade ago. In the morning as I was leaving, a housekeeper had a room opening and cleaning. He stops me and says, WTF is this? Is it worth money? I look in and someone has filled the bathtub nearly to the brim with land/commons. If they're in the tub, does that make them islands? Not a maid, but a hotel guest. Put on the do not disturb sign. Maid decides to enter anyway, while I'm balls deep in my girlfriend. It was quite the mood killer, especially since the maid insisted in cleaning our room, because she was here anyway. Not sure if real story, or Family Guy cutaway gag. So far, there is less evidence of rampant weirdness in hotels than I'd hoped. Be the change you want to see in the world. I was an it guy for a casino, got a call that a guest couldn't get his device connected to the Wi-Fi, so I had to go up and give him a hand. Come to get his tablet connected. He's in the room. Older guy, 60 plus, wearing a pair of gold booty shorts. He's got 3 girls. IDs meant they had to be 21, but they weren't much more than that, in there with him. Thongs and fuzzy high-heeled slippers. Topless. Shameless. They want to connect the iPad so he can play some video to go along with the game they're playing. Couple bags of toys and tubes of stuff scattered all around the room. 2 of the girls were getting impatient and already playing with each other by the time I got there. I've got my own kinks, so who am I to judge? Got his stuff connected, and they were able to get his movie, and got it playing on the TV in the room. He tipped me a small baggie of X and Molly and a couple $100, all in $50s. I took the money, and let him keep the drugs. Find out later, he was a VIP card member, and typically dropped $20 grand or so on the tables. Man knows how to spend his money.